So I'm Evan Falbaum, writer, director, cinematographer of Mr. Marvelous.
Mitch Landry, actor, Mr. Marvelous.
So where did tell us a little bit about the short and where did the inspiration come from?
So we've given up on trying to hide spoilers at this point. So it's a movie about a older, kind of washed up superhero who spends Christmas Eve alone. He's estranged from his daughter. His day job is as a mall Santa, and his house gets broken into that night, and some people think he's an old man discover that he's actually a superhero. Have to deal with that.
So where did the inspiration for the story come from?
It's a project I've wanted to do for a couple of years. I'm a fan of the superhero genre, but I tend to lean more towards the more serious Christopher Nolan type takes on superheroes. And so we knew I know at some point I wanted to try to tackle that genre in what felt like a fresh way. Most of our projects, they kind of sit in my head for a few years, mulling over till we find a reason to make one, and this was kind of one of those. So at some point last year, I decided we wanted to try to attempt it as a short film, and then we decided to do it for the Film Prize, and just kind of went from there.
And you got in the top 20.
Yep.
What I really liked about this short, there's many things I like about the short, so let's tackle some of them. What I really like, one of the things I like about the short is you see most mall Santa films, it's always about the crazy mall Santa, but he's a really human being. He's a father. He's someone that's beloved in the community. We're seeing some really poignant moments. As what I really like is after he sees the last child, he's going into this locker room and he's being handed his envelope of cash and saying come, we'll see you next year. So talk to us about humanizing the Santa and not making him into a comical joke or laugh.
Well, the idea with this, we actually, our opening shot is kind of a Santa laugh moment, but then it gets kind of serious from there. But the idea was actually presented by one of our producers, Kimmerton Hargrove, to set the film around Christmas, because it kind of adds an element of nostalgia and kind of heightened emotion. It also there's like Batman Returns and some great superhero stories that take place around Christmas. It's kind of a nice setting. So we wanted to kind of lean into that, and then I had the revelation that we wanted him to be kind of washed up, and the idea is sort of like The Incredibles, where he's his glory days as a superhero in the past, and some things have happened. He's an older man now. He's kind of lost his powers, and it's kind of like if you follow that track through to even just old age. We don't get specific about how he loses his powers, but we've entertained some ideas of like maybe it's something you age out of, or maybe it's let's see what Superman looks like when he's older. Not that you're terribly old. We're probably playing you a little old, but the gray beard helps.
Yeah, I felt old.
But you don't really see many. The other thing I really loved about it is you don't really see many older superheroes. When we think of a superhero, we think of someone that's young and fit, not someone that has gray hair and a beer belly and all this other stuff going on.
We've seen so much of that with like the Marvel films and everything.
Right.
It's like, what's the point of exploring that again? Let's see something different. And actually, I wanted to do this a couple years ago, and then the movie Logan came out, and I was like, that's like exactly what I want to do. So that poured some cold water on the idea for a little while, but then we kind of got the guts to do it again.
When he gave you the script, what was your reaction? What made you say, hey, I'm 100% on board, let's do this now?
Yeah, I'd already was on board. Evan just had to say superhero movie, and my jaw dropped, and I said, take it from there. And we've worked together quite a bit, so I don't really question what he's throwing. He's just amazing at his job, so.
The big trick with Mitch is he's a big superhero fan, and he thought I was going to make him look cool and do a lot of cool fight scenes with cool special effects, and we were kind of trying to do the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So what was your reaction? He told me to watch The Wrestler, and I went, What was your reaction being told to run down the street in December, in the cold, in the middle of the night, in your underwear?
Yeah, I dug that totally. I actually went out, and he wasn't sure I could do it. He's like, we're thinking of doing a scene running at night outside barefoot, and I was like, give me a minute, hang on. And I called him back like 20 minutes later and sent him. I went outside immediately and set up a camera, and I just to see if I could do it, and I could do it. Actually, the run I sent you was much better than in the film. So yeah, that's so great. That's just great stuff. I look forward to it.
Did any of the neighbors post on Nextdoor.com saying, "Hey, there's a guy in his underwear last night running down the street"? Or
we were expecting that, but it benefited that I think it was about 1 a.m. by the time I got around to shooting that. So there weren't too many people looking outside.
The ambulance in my driveway, I know for a fact that turned a bunch of heads too.
Fortunately,
most of the neighbors know.
Yeah, fortunately the ambulance was only there for about an hour. But,
yeah.
So let's talk about the scenes and the locations, because you have to film in Northwest Louisiana. It's one of the requirements of the Film Prize. But for me, the locker scene that was just beautifully shot, and then of course inside Mitch's home, and then of course getting the ambulance company involved to come out and
Sure.
do that. So talk to us about locations and getting your crew involved.
Yeah, so the locations were actually, I think people underestimate sometimes how important that is, and it was really one of the last things we settled. We were probably looking for a house for like probably 2 months or whatever.
Yeah.
It was really like the last thing that we cracked, and we were looking. We knew I had an idea how I wanted the lighting, and I really wanted to have that big living room window that we'd have that light coming in through. And Mitch had that in his house, but we were trying to avoid that. I'm already asking him to do a lot. I didn't want to take over his house and make his family mad at me. But at the end of our search, we just couldn't find a place like that. And then we pitched the idea, and fortunately, Vicky was okay with it. Yeah. And we made it happen.
I know one thing I wasn't expecting about that, and when we use in our house, we kind of had, at least I had in my mind, that as a broken down superhero, that the place would look disheveled, really just horrible. Was kind of and that's the, I think, obvious leap. And yet, when the circumstances change that situation, sometimes it brings a little magic to it. I watch it now, and I can't imagine it not being shot there, even though it's none of those things. Now it speaks to that, he had a quality life at some point, and now that this is kind of an echo of that. And so
it's lived in.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the place isn't all that either, but it's pretty cool. It worked out really, really well.
What I really appreciated was the detailed the set design. Like before we got on camera, I asked you guys, was this based on a true character or someone here in Shreveport? Because you had the little plaques and awards and the key to the city. To me, that's very authentic.
Sure. When those were custom props that we did, and I designed the little fake newspaper article that's on the wall. But a lot of it, surprisingly, once we decided we were going to shoot at Mitch's house and got permission from the family, we kind of looked at his house and probably 75% of it was kind of okay to leave. He has a family living there. So you could imagine that they'd been there and left, or whatever the character's past circumstances might have been. And like his bedroom even had like a perfect globe light next to the bed that we just used natural light in his room. So we rearranged some of the artwork and moved some things around, cleaned it up a little, took away some of the Houston Texans stuff, decorations around the living room. But we really didn't have to do all that much. We just had to remember what we moved so we could move it back. But those two props, the key and the newspaper article, are really the only things we brought in, I think. I mean, I think I've added some lamps for practical light in the living room, and but for the most part, that's it.
That's about it. I did my best to acquire beer cans and
I'd bring
stuff.
The old phone. He didn't have
That's right.
He didn't have a regular
Right.
phone.
One thing that I know hasn't been brought up yet, and I'd like to speak on it just because I see it, is going into this. I think every time Evan does a movie, sometimes it seems like he picks one or two aspects of filming that he wants to enhance and challenge himself a bit on. And in this one, he told me early on it was going to be about color, that he wanted to focus more on color than we had in anything different before. Thus, the purple. And if you look at it, that accent lighting is factored in kind of everywhere, and I just think that's incredibly cool. We watched the Blade Runner, the latest Blade Runner, how sort of stylized and colorized it was, and I feel like he brought an aspect of that to this movie that I think is also just, it's subtle, but it's there, and it just kind of helps tie everything together.
And let's talk about the color, because the colors, like for instance, in the locker room, it's bright. You have the dark wood. It really males well, but you go into Mitch's bathroom in his shower, and it looks like something from the 1950s to 1960s, and then you go into his bedroom, and it's a lived-in place, as you said, and then the lighting you had to do in the living room for the fight scenes. So talk to us about lighting and how important that is to you.
My little addendum to him saying it was about color is really more about focusing on lighting for me. I really wanted a very specific kind of lighting. In the past, we've done a lot more kind of run and gun, natural light stuff. And so, like, from the start, like I said, the location of the house had to have the living room window I could blast a big gold light through, because I was going to be lighting the whole movie, basically. But, like the locker room scene, we just lucked out. I mean, we were unfortunately, we're all from Shreveport, so we have some connections, and our producer, Kimmerton, had worked at that country club that had the locker room. And it just so, I think one skill we've developed over time is being able to kind of work with whatever environment we end up with. So, I wasn't seeking out necessarily like the beautiful curve of the lockers in there, but once I got in that room, I'm like, oh, this is perfect.
But that's what real Louisianans are like, working with what you have and making the best of it.
Sure.
You take that with the Cajun Navy, for example, and what they've been doing with all the storm recovery, and then you look at, the Cajuns that live along the coast, they don't have much, and they're having to bring in, everything that they need to live down there in the swamp, and that's kind of the theme of people who live in Louisiana is...
Yeah, making it work with what you got.
Yeah, make it work with what you got, and I think that's very important, that's very unique.
That's very much our style of filmmaking historically, because I grew up here, and when the Film Prize is awesome, but it wasn't here when I was growing up, and we would make stuff in our backyards, we'd figure stuff out, we'd find stuff, and LA and New York and those kind of places always seem so far away, so we never dreamed of building sets in a sound stage or anything. And so coming up, we just you learn to work with what you have, and then that becomes a real asset, I think, later on when you're presented with realities of live action filmmaking where you can't have what you want, and so how do you adjust to what's here in front of you?
I think that's beautiful, because that is the Louisiana and the Cajun way of doing things in life, whether it be filmmaking or shrimping or boating or the other industries here. Going into that, why should people come to Northwest Louisiana and film? We see Cajun Justice and the Swamp people and the Duck Dynasty people. Duck Dynasty's up in Monroe, which is northern Louisiana. But
Cajun Court Television, well, it's a local production that's done fantastic.
But why should people come here and film? What's about Shreveport, Bossier, Northwest Louisiana?
I think there's a real benefit to it being a quieter, less obvious place. Some people might want to pretend it's bigger, has everything, but I think it's a real asset that it's a smaller, tight-knit community that doesn't have a lot of the hustle and bustle of a big city that gets in the way.
But you have big city things. You have casinos.
Yeah, you can imitate a big city pretty easily.
A beautiful downtown where you don't destroy your buildings like we do in Dallas.
Right. And also just the community is more open to it, because any building or storefront here is not being asked by 100 people every day to film there, and so a lot of people are happy to help out or more forgiving and not as uptight about getting paid or trying to give you a hard time.
What did you learn about yourselves professionally and personally in doing this project?
Ooh, that's a loaded one. This one was really it was a challenge to our filmmaking group at Movie Sauce to see what we could do if we gave something, our entire put everything we had into it, because we had just come off of a feature film that kind of stretched our resources a little thin and was really, really ambitious. And so I was feeling a little broken after that one, I think, and I wanted to see, all right, if we just do mostly one location, we really light the hell out of it and give it everything we got. Mitch giving a hell of a performance. Let's all go for it. So see what we can do in 15 minutes and see what comes out the other side. And I think we've all been really proud of it.
For me, I learned, it's an ongoing process for me, and I count on Evan and the rest of the Movie Sauce group. They teach me. I don't have this experience, although I have a massive amount of enthusiasm. And so every time, and it usually ends up coming to this: relax, let go, be yourself, and it's going to be okay. Instead of overthinking it, don't overthink it. You must have said that 300 times.
I told you that right before this interview. But it's worth pointing out that Mitch isn't a trained or even pursuing being a professional actor. This is something that I guess I've forced you into a little bit.
It's just, I think of it as my tribe of people. My son wanted to be in the film business, and it seemed like the easiest way to do that. They're a pretty well-connected tribe, but you get your foot in the door, and which has worked out well. My son's done film work as well now, and once you're in that tribe of just beautiful people doing creative stuff, I was sold, and I'll always be a part of it to that degree. It
was your son that saved our butts in the middle of the night when we were trying to get that superhero costume on you.
Who's got pins? I do.
So tell us, before we go, tell us about Cajun Court TV. You brought it
goodness.
up.
Well, Cajun Court Television with Justice Jackie. Locally made production, one of the few that rolls. We've been going 5 years now. It's doing fantastic. They kicked Judge Judy off the local channel, put us in the slot. Jackie's wonderful. I produce, write, etc.
One of the actors in the film, Torin, was discovered from Cajun Court from working with Mitch.
Yeah, exactly. We use a lot of local talent, which is great, because we do this and we get to use these people in multiple ways. So, yeah, it's a fun little gig. Check it out. It's on channel 45 every day in Shreveport between 5 and 5:30, and right after Saturday Night Live, Saturday nights. So check it out.
What's next for Movie Sauce?
That's the $1 million or the $50,000 question. That's it.
The 50,000. I love that.
He's been bugging me about this for a while. We definitely want to pursue a longer story with Mr. Marvelous, whether that's a feature or a series. There's definitely a world there that we kind of hint at that we want to dive into. The way we go about that is still, I'm still unsure about, but it's definitely something we want to pursue.
What's the website to Movie Sauce?
Moviesauce.com.